Alright, this is a 95 Civic with a 1.5 non-VTEC motor. And the head sounded like it had a bunch of silverware running around in it. Could be something as simple as just setting the rocker, and there's an adjustment to be made with that. But it sounded like there was something more catastrophic happening, so we opted instead to replace the head, which is over here, all degreased, checked with the pressure check device to make sure that the head held the pressure, and the trueness and flatness of the mounting surface was checked as well, and that didn't even need any machining. So thankfully that worked out. We had the head here, so hopefully this will do the trick. If it doesn't, then yeah, we're going to have some real issues. But a lot of things have to come off the damn motor. As you can tell, you got your exhaust manifold. The intake as well is going to be coming off, so you got to get back there and deal with that. And there's a couple of electrics that might have to come off as well. We've seen some wires going back there. We'll see. Once that the head's removed, then of course we're going to put the block at top dead center, line up these little marks that are on the timing gear along with the crankshaft, and there's a third mark that is lined up too with the configuration of the timing belt. So there you go. These motors are pretty good. They seem to wind up nice, they run decent, but this one in particular seems like something else is going on, so we'll see what happens. Well, the head is off. Yes, the motor is decapitated. And the surface isn't that bad. There isn't no blatant damage that you can tell. So we look over to the head here. We're not seeing any breaking or any of that in the head gasket. Right in here, these areas here are probably what's the compromise. Some very strange thing. Usually when a head gasket fails on a like Chrysler and shit, it breaks in between. But in this one, it just seems it may have compromised around in here. There's material missing. Alright, there's the head. As you can tell, the surface is pretty nice. The intake or exhaust side, it's the exhaust side, needed a couple of studs, so I put those in. And then got your gasket set, and everything is there to do this job. So we lucked out there. There wasn't some sort of shipping error thing. Be a good idea to change out the distributor gaskets, and there's a couple of other seals here. But the valve cover stuff is here, throttle body stuff too for that matter, and a number of these rubber O-rings I am not familiar with. May find out later, who knows. Then we also have the bolts. Now these are a different design. I haven't seen this style. It's got that knurling at the top for much better retention. They're the same length, diameter as the old ones, and those should retain it pretty good. So we have the block surface cleaned up and ready for the install of the head gasket. You want to use something that doesn't leave a residue. I have a real thin light solvent that I use that it's called Auto Solve. You can use it on plastic to get rid of glue, all that kind of stuff. It's way better than Goo Gone or whatever, and that sort of thing. Make sure that it doesn't leave it resting. Now the head is back on and the head bolts are torqued to spec. The timing belt has been installed. All the marks line up right. The distributor too, all lined up to number 1. So hopefully we won't be a tooth off. It's highly unlikely, but there's always a possibility. But all the indications show that it doesn't. A lot more things to hook up to this. Probably about halfway. See how it goes. The intake is installed, as is the exhaust manifold and the distributor, because we wanted to make sure that the timing marks for the timing belt lined up to number 1 on the distributor. And as you can see, that big ass toothpick there is a skewer really, but that's at top dead center. That's number 1 cylinder on a Honda. It goes from right to left, so in succession too. It's number 2, 3, and 4. So the distributor, I had to turn the crank a couple times, but number 1 is down here, and that's exactly where it lined up with the other marks that are on the timing sprocket here on the head, and the crank sprocket, which is covered up now by a harmonic balancer. When we first got the car, the harmonic balancer bolt came out, which was even more bizarre because it's like, how in the fuck does that thing ever get loose? You were supposed to put it on with like 120 foot-pounds or some crazy high foot-pound torque spec on that bolt, and somehow that thing came out, so I actually had to replace that bolt. It was only $20-some, being as it seems thread specific. The head is supposed to be that shape, and with the washer and stuff, who knows? So that's why you had to get it from Honda. We may have found a better deal on, eBay or something, but we didn't really have time for that. So there's electrics yet to be put together and connectors, and then you got your fuel injection and the connections that go with that harness, and then the other cooling sensors over here. The thermostat was replaced within the last year or so, so it should be good yet. So we won't replace it even though we have access. So we'll hook up the rest of it and hope to God it doesn't leak. It should run. And it should run fairly decent. We're hoping that this is the second Honda motor that we'll have, besides the 1.6 VTEC in the other car. That is actually the smoothest running Honda motor that we've ever had. It doesn't miss. It seems we've had 2 other Honda motors that always had a miss. So it's cool that that one doesn't, so hopefully this one doesn't either. And that'll be good for the driver, because this is going to be the daily driver again. This is a comparison of 2 timing covers. The one on the left was actually the one that was on this motor. And as you can see, there's damage done. It's because of a disc. There is a difference in the way that this thing is designed. It has a lip on it, so it must be concave to the crank, and then it'll ride properly against that plastic cover. So if it's riding with this ridge, it's going to be riding correctly. If it's installed backwards though, then that's when this thing's going to dig into the cover. Right there is the disc. This is installed per the manual correctly. I think that I installed it backwards last time, and that's why the timing cover has damage on it. The belt is good. There's nothing happening with that at all, and we'll go on from there. As we continue the saga on the 1.5, after a test fire, it ended up being that it was 180 out. And this is why. There's a third mark on the crank gear that I wasn't aware of until I looked at a manual. See those little numbers down there? Right here. These numbers, this line here has to line up with this pointer on the plastic. Even though it doesn't look like it from this angle, if you were to get in there, can't tell. Still can't tell. But anyway, it lines up. It doesn't look like it here, but it truly does. Test run was successful. Was screwed up as far as the timing goes with that third timing mark on that camshaft gear for the timing belt. So you got to make certain all three are lined up. One on the left, one on the right, and then one at like 7 o'clock. The 7 o'clock must point to the inner part of that timing cover. So far so good, so we'll see about buttoning this shit up here. Got to get some antifreeze, and then this alternator belt has seen better days, so we're gonna have to get another one of them as well. I don't know why the hell that thing shredded up like it did, but probably something interfering. We'll find out. We'll get a new one of those. And then there's the tensioner that's got to be put on yet, along with the reinforcement for the motor mount. And then this marvel of engineering is for the aftermarket cruise control that's on this beauty. Decided to use the other valve cover, which wasn't as sludgy and icky. Seemed to seat fairly well on the surface of the head, so I'm hoping that there isn't going to be any leaking this time. And that top cover for the timing belt is seen better days as well, so we'll try and figure out an alternative on how to cinch that to the broken plastic somehow. Heat shield for the exhaust manifold too's got to go on, and thankfully there's no leaks at the gas hookup. So hopefully all the issues have been resolved. It's just a matter now of making it pretty. As you see here, these are all the other parts from the donor car, along with some fancy ones from this car. These plug wires were obnoxiously thick, and they didn't seem to seal very well on the valve cover. But, you know, so I decided to go with the other version instead. The distributor that was on the other car, we weren't able to test the damn thing out, because the guy that was before us had a wonderful little wire running from the ignition switch directly here, and I am not certain how in the hell it works, but it does. I reconnected it, crimped it a little bit so that it was tight, and then wrapped it in the tape here, so it's different than what the other one was. Whereas this just has the two connectors, and we're good, as it should be. But of course these wiring gurus have to do some other bullshit. And if I knew more about it, then I would correct it, and we would run the other distributor to see if it worked, which it should. It likely came off a running car anyway. As you can see, there's the brand new, almost new, it's like a year old, harmonic balancer bolt put on with the red Loctite, and a new keyway installed, so hopefully that thing ain't gonna come off like it did the first time that we had it. And we'll just continue on hooking up the normal stuff that goes here, along with the air conditioning. So, fun.
You would have had the fucking thing on when you got out of the car, you know, out of the cab there. You would have been already on. This is like Blair Witch Project. You understand? It's like documenting the whole fucking thing everywhere you go.